Hey guys, tonight we're going somewhere a little different, and a whole lot older than the cozy bedrooms and glowing phone screens you're used to. Imagine the heat of stone under your bare feet, the temps of dust already clinging to your tongue, and the low murmur of people moving around you in a place so ancient it makes the pyramids of Egypt look like latecomers at the party. This is the Indus Valley, 4,000 years in the past, and spoiler alert, you probably won't survive this. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. I'd love for you to drop a comment with where you're re-listening from and what time it is right now, because there's something magical about imagining people all around the world tuning in to the same sleepy history. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You shuffle forward, blinking against the brightness. The sky isn't a polite blue, it's a blazing white, as though the sun has decided today is the day it will personally roast you like an overdone naan. Dust rises with every step, coating your throat until you feel like you've swallowed chalk. The first sensation you register is how loud the place is. Carts rumbling, goats bleating, voices raised in a language whose syllables twist and snap in unfamiliar ways. Somewhere, a hammer clangs against bronze, and a child yells a word you can pass, but that definitely means, look at this confused stranger. It's Mohenjo-Daro, at least, that's what archaeologists millennia later will call it. For now, it's just the city, and it sprawls farther than you expected. Streets line up almost too neatly, right angles cutting through the chaos, like someone grabbed a giant ruler and designed the whole place. Modern city planners still argue whether New York owes more to Roman grids or Indus Valley genius. But as you try to orient yourself, it's clear the ancient architects had their act together. Your first mistake is stepping into the main lane without watching for ox carts. The wheels are solid, heavy discs of wood, and one lurches past so close your sleeve brushes its rough side. The driver shouts something not exactly friendly, judging from the tone. Probably a warning about paying attention unless you want to become roadkill 4,000 years too early. You stumble back into the narrow shade of a mud brick wall, your heart thudding, and realize you already stick out. The air smells of clay dust, cow dung fuel smoldering in hearths, and something faintly sweet fermented barley maybe, though you can't quite place it. It's an aroma cocktail that would never make it into a scented candle. A couple of kids run by holding terracotta toys. A wheeled bull painted with simple lines. They laugh, and one of them pauses just long enough to gawk at your clothes. You glance down. Yep, polyester hoodie, not exactly blending in. Everywhere, the brickwork grabs your attention. Not sloppy sun-dried lumps, but carefully baked rectangles, so uniform it looks like they've rolled off an assembly line. Historians still argue whether this kind of standardization means a single central authority, or just a whole civilization of obsessive perfectionists. Either way, you notice the bricks underfoot are hard, flat, and arranged in tidy streets. And unlike most ancient cities, you're not wading through trash heaps. There are drains running alongside the streets, covered with slabs, quietly carrying waste away. You half expect to see a city inspector with a clipboard and hard hat. But don't get too impressed. That drain you just peeked into, it reeks like a backed-up dorm bathroom on a Friday night. You jerk back, gagging, and nearly collide with a man carrying a basket of fish that smells only marginally better. Survival tip number 1, mind the drains. Survival tip number 2, don't make gagging faces at locals' food unless you want suspicious stares. Your stomach already growls, but let's be honest, you wouldn't last long on their menu. Wheat, barley, peas, sesame, dates, those are the staples. Sounds wholesome, right? But you're used to pasta from a box, avocados on toast, maybe a protein bar in the afternoon. Here, you're looking at flatbread baked on hot stones, lentil stew thick as paste, and milk curdled into something that smells like your forgotten gym socks. And that sweet hint in the air earlier. Possibly fermented barley drink, basically proto-beer. It sounds like a fun discovery until you realize it's warm, sour, and comes in a pot that hasn't seen dish soap since, ever. You wander deeper, past a tall building that looms more than the rest. The Great Bath, they'll call it later. A sunken tank lined with baked bricks, once filled with water, steps leading down as if inviting you to take a dip. To modern eyes, it looks like an ancient spa, but in reality, it might have been for rituals. Purification, or who knows, just the ancient version of don't pee in the pool. Historians still argue whether this was religious or just civic hygiene. You picture yourself stepping in and immediately imagine the parasites throwing a welcome party in your bloodstream. Yeah, maybe skip bath time. Even if you try to keep your distance, you can't escape the heat. It presses down on your scalp like a hot iron. Sweat dribbles down your back, making your hoodie cling like cling film. You tug at it, realizing too late that polyester is the worst possible outfit in 120-degree Indus sun. The locals are in cottons, light, breathable, loose. You're a walking microwave burrito. A woman balancing a pot on her head smirks as she breezes past, not even breaking a sweat. You mutter something about performance fabrics, but in this world, performance means surviving sunstroke. You push on, heart thumping, trying not to show how dizzy the glare makes you. A goat bleats in your ear too close, way too close, and you, well, to find yourself nose tuners with its blunt face. Its breath smells like fermented grass and regret. You back away, almost tripping on the uneven step of a house threshold. Inside, the dark room flickers with lamplight. Clay walls cool against the heat, and the faint sound of grinding grain fills the air. You imagine living here, shoulder to shoulder with family, sleeping on red mats, no doors with locks, privacy basically non-existent. And here comes the kicker. You don't even know the language. The script carved onto tiny seals is still undeciphered in your own time. So right now you're hearing words that no one in the 21st century could ever translate. A merchant waves a seal stone at you, a little carved square with a one-horned bull etched onto it. He seems to think you're interested in his goods. You nod awkwardly, then back away. Because how exactly do you explain that you forgot to bring bronze coins, or cowrie shells, or whatever counts as currency here? Another mistake, staring too long. Eye contact, that's too direct, or smiling at the wrong moment, can get you in trouble. The merchant's expression hardens for a moment before he shrugs and turns to someone else. You breathe out, disaster narrowly avoided, but the truth dawns. Every casual movement you make, how you walk, where you stand, whether you speak, marks you as an outsider, not exotic, cool outsider, more like what's wrong with that person outsider. You try to blend by sitting on a low wall near a cluster of people. They chatter, gesturing with hands that are calloused and scarred. You glance down at your own, pale and smooth by comparison, fingers more used to tapping screens than hauling baskets. They notice. Someone laughs. Someone else says something that makes the group chuckle. It's not cruel, exactly, but you're definitely the punchline. Your skin prickles. Not just embarrassment, mosquitoes are already circling. You slap one on your arm, leaving a smear of blood. Not even your blood, probably. And just like that, your imagination jumps to malaria, dengue fevers that rack your body until you gladly swap a week of Netflix buffering for a single Tylenol. But here, there's no Tylenol, no antibiotics, not even chicken soup unless you're willing to wring the chicken's neck yourself. Still, the city keeps moving around you, indifferent. Women carry baskets of grain. Men shout over weights at the market. Children chase each other around a cart piled with dates. Somewhere, a bull snorts, stamping its hooves. Life here is bustling, stubbornly ordinary, the same rhythms it's been following for centuries. To them, it's just Tuesday. To you, it's a miracle you haven't fainted yet. The ground vibrates faintly underfoot. At first, you think it's your imagination, heat shimmer playing tricks. But then another rumble passes through the street. A cart rolling over a drain cover. Or maybe, just maybe, one of the tremors that occasionally ripple through this land. Later, people will argue whether earthquakes played a role in the decline of these cities. Right now, it's just another reminder. The earth itself doesn't particularly care about your survival. So here you are, on day one, drenched in sweat, hungry, sunburned, bug-bitten, confused, and already teetering on the edge of heat exhaustion. And the day hasn't even really started yet. You look around at the sprawling maze of streets, the crowds that flow like rivers you can't read, the smells that refuse to separate into anything familiar. You realize, with a sinking feeling, that lasting even a single day here is going to be the hardest challenge of your life. You wobble back onto the main street, still dazed from nearly face-planting into the goat's whiskery grin. The city doesn't pause, for you it just keeps humming, carts rolling, sandals slapping, oxen grunting. Mohenjo-Daro is alive in a way that buzzes right through your skin. You shuffle down the lane, eyes wide, trying to take in the endless brick, and more brick. Seriously, you start to think that whoever controlled the kilners must been the Jeff Bezos of the Bronze Age. You find yourself funneled into one of the broader avenues, the kind with drains covered by neat slabs and little side alleys branching off like tributaries. It's strangely orderly. You half expect to see street signs. Great bath this way, gift shop, 200 meters. Of course, there's nothing like that, just more houses, pressed shoulder to shoulder. 2 stories high, with small windows staring blankly down at you. Historians still argue whether these homes had uniform layouts because of strict regulation, or because builders just found one good blueprint and copy-pasted it 1,000 times. As you edge along, you notice each house has its own entrance from the street, sometimes opening directly into what looks like a workshop. Through one doorway, you glimpse someone hunched over a potter's wheel, clay spinning beneath calloused fingers, a rhythmic slap that's almost hypnotic. Through another, a woman pours grain from a basket into a storage jar taller than your torso. The jars are sealed with lumps of clay-practical ancient Tupperware. A smell of fresh bread drifts from yet another house, which would be comforting if it weren't mixed with a tang of sweat, smoke, and manure. Then your eyes snag on the structure everyone always gawks at. The Great Bath. You can't miss it. A huge, brick-lined tank, steps leading down on every side, water glinting faintly in the bottom. You lean over the edge, curious, and instantly regret if the water has that greenish tint that whispers, "Drink me," and spend the next week regretting your life choices. People around you treat it with respect, though. They step carefully, sprinkle water on themselves. Some even dip whole bodies with solemn faces. Historians still debate if this was religious ritual, a hygiene club, or just the Bronze Age version of hey, public pools open. Whatever the purpose, you're sweating too hard to be picky. You're tempted to cannonball straight in till you remember those microbes sharpening their metaphorical knives. Moving on, you're swept into a busy plaza. At its center stands a raised platform. Later, archaeologists will call it a granary, though some insist it was more like an administrative building. You watch workers hauling sacks up ramps, their muscles straining, the sacks spilling grain that scrunches underfoot like sand. Birds swoop in to snatch kernels, cawing overhead. You picture yourself assigned to this job, lugging 50-pound sacks in 110-degree heat, and suddenly your ergonomic desk chair back home feels like a lost paradise. A boy shouts and points at you. For a terrifying moment, you think you've been exposed as the world's worst time traveler. But no, he's showing off his toy carter, tiny wheeled contraption pulled by a clay bowl. You crouch down, nodding approval. The kid beams and pushes it toward you. You try to roll it back, but it sticks in the dust and tips over. The boy groans as if he just ruined his prized possession. Smooth move. First you nearly get flattened by a real ox cart, and now you've fumbled the toy version. Trying to redeem yourself, you follow the smell of food. A vendor squats beside a flat slab heated by coals, slapping dough into thin rounds. You realize with glee that he's making flatbread bread, simple, familiar. He glances up, clearly willing to sell. But when you pat your pockets, all you've got is lint and a phone that one tea exists for another for millennia. You mime hunger anyway. He scowls. A neighbor laughs. You back away before you cause an international trade crisis. Still, you can't help marveling. This place isn't a random jumble of huts, it's a functioning city. Wide streets for carts, narrow lanes for foot traffic, drainage that actually works most days, public spaces for storage and gatherings. Compare that to the muddy alleys of many later medieval towns, and you start to realize these folks had urban planning nailed. Fringe theorists even claim alien architects were involved. But honestly, you just see brilliant humans with too much free time and an obsession with straight lines. You pause at a corner, watching a cluster of seals being exchanged. Little square stones, carved with animals' balls, elephants, tigers, even some mythical unicorn-like beast. Each is pressed into clay lumps, leaving crisp impressions. It's their way of saying, this belongs to me, or maybe. This shipment is official. You reach out, curious, and nearly get your hand slapped. Lesson learned, don't mess with other people's paperwork. The sun tilts lower, but it doesn't get cooler. Shadows stretch, voices rise, and the street fills with more people heading home. You re-jostled along until you squeeze into a lane so narrow to people can barely pass without brushing shoulders. The houses loom close, upper stories leaning inward, creating a canyon of brick. It's cooler here, though claustrophobic. Somewhere a baby cries, somewhere else a dog barks. You stumble over a drain cover, almost face-planting into a pile of discarded reed mats. By now your head throbs from dehydration, your stomach growls like a cornered tiger, and your feet ache from uneven paving. You can't help muttering, I wouldn't last a day here. A passing woman hears you, tilts her head, and laughs as if you've just delivered a good punchline. Maybe, in a way, you did. The sun refuses to let you breathe. It presses down like a heavy, unrelenting hand, flattening your willpower into a sweaty puddle. You step into the middle of an open lane, hoping for a breeze, but the air is as still as a parked cart. Not a leaf moves, not a hint of wind brushes your face. Your shirt clings in a way that makes you wonder if you've been glued into it. And every brick wall radiates stored heat, so it's like walking between giant oven trays. You crane your neck, scanning the rooftops. Some families spread red mats up there, hoping to catch a nighttime draft, but right now the roofs are bare, shimmering in the glare. You'd kill 4 sunglasses, but you didn't bring any rookie mistake. Your eyes water as you squint, and you stumble over a loose brick. Someone behind you laughs. You pretend it's part of your cool, modern swagger. Spoiler, it isn't. Your throat is screaming for water. You spot a woman lowering a jar into a well, the rope creaking as she hauls it up. Perfect. Salvation. You rush forward, hand outstretched like you're in a soda commercial, but the water she pours into a clay cup is cloudy, tinged with little flecks of grit. She offers it with a polite nod. You hesitate. Your 21st century stomach practically yells, "Don't you dare." And yet, the dryness in your throat whispers back, "Just one sip won't hurt. It will hurt. Oh, it will." You take a cautious swallow and instantly regret it. The water tastes like liquid earth, with an afterbite that suggests something alive just wriggled past your tongue. You hand the cup back with a strained smile, trying not to gag. The woman shrugs, unbothered, and drinks deeply herself. Her body's adapted, yours. It's filing a complaint with the universe. You stagger away, already imagining the intestinal fireworks waiting to ambush you later. Historians still argue whether widespread illness from contaminated water contributed to the decline of these cities, or whether it was more about climate shifts. Right now, though you're not debating, you're just praying your gut holds out until nightfall. Your brain craves shade. Any shade. You hug the wall of a house, crouching where a sliver of darkness cuts across the lane. A boy skips past, balancing a clay pot on his head like it's no big deal. Sweat drips down your temple, into your eyes, stinging. You wipe it with your sleeve, which only makes the fabric wetter and saltier. You mutter, "I'm basically a walking salt lick," and a goat nearby perks its ears. Jokes on you, the goat actually looks interested. A rumble in the distance draws your attention. Not thunder, not carts, just a low, constant drone. Cicadas. The insects sing as if competing with the sun itself, adding another layer of sensory assault. You think longingly of air conditioning frosty vents, humming compressors, the bliss of artificial winter. Here, the closest you get is dunking your whole body into a river that may or may not eat you alive. Speaking of rivers, you head toward the faint glimmer of water beyond the city edge. The Indus sprawls wide, sluggish, its banks cluttered with reeds. Children splash at the shallows, laughing, their voices carrying. You watch them with envy. But then a man nearby thrusts a spear into the water and hauls up a fish as long as your arm, flopping, glistening, furious. He grins. You stare, equal parts impressed and horrified, at the raw immediacy of dinner. The river is lifeblood here. Irrigation channels snake out from it, feeding fields of barley and wheat. You can see them stretching away, little green rectangles against the brown dust. Without this water, there'd be no bread, no beer, no city. But the river is fickle. People tell stories of it shifting course suddenly, flooding entire districts overnight. One year it gives, the next it takes. And you, a sweaty outsider, realize how fragile survival really is when one river tantrum can erase your home. You shuffle back toward the heart of the city, nearly tripping as your sandal catches on a raised drain cover. Another reminder, the Indus Valley had better street drains than many modern towns. But stand too close and you'll see on smell why life expectancy wasn't exactly generous. You gag again, and a passing child pinches their nose dramatically at you. Apparently you're the smelly one now. Your lips crack as the hours drag. You lick them, instantly making them worse. Somewhere, someone offers you a data-wrinkled fruit from a basket. Sweet, sticky, like nature's candy bar. For a moment, bliss floods your mouth. The sugar is a tiny salvation against the heat's tyranny. But it also makes you thirstier. Great, you're stuck in a cycle. Drink, risk disease. Don't drink, risk shriveling like a forgotten raisin. A fringe story pops into your mind. That some Indus Valley folks may have smeared crocodile dung mixed with oil on their skin as primitive sunscreen. Totally unproven, but as you bake in the unfiltered sun, you start thinking, yeah, hand me a tub of that gator goo. Anything's better than turning into a lobster. By late afternoon, you're staggering. The heat has hollowed you out. Your vision wobbles at the edges, little black dots dancing in the light. Locals move past you, seemingly fine, chatting, hauling, laughing. Their bodies know this rhythm. Yours is collapsing under it. You duck into another shadow, panting, cheeks flushed hotter than the clay bricks. You mutter, half delirious, I wouldn't last a day here. And somewhere, the city seems to agree. The dry ache in your throat isn't your only problem. As the evening creeps closer, the sound you first mistake for distant thunder swells and thickens until you realize the sky itself is shifting moods. The monsoon is coming. At first, there's relief. You've begged for shade, for a break in the heat. But the relief curdles quickly when you see how the locals react. They move fast. Pots are stacked under awnings, baskets hauled indoors, reed mats snatched from rooftops. Children who were laughing in the lanes are suddenly scooped up and carried. The buzz of the city morphs into something sharper, more urgent. You blink up at the horizon, where clouds are massing in walls of bruised grey. They advance like an army, swallowing the blazing sun. A single drop hits your cheek, cool, delicious. Then another, then 100 more, until the world seems to dissolve into water. At first it's wonderful. The dust dies, the heat softens, your skin sighs. You tilt your head back, mouth open, gulping the sky's generosity. But quickly, the streets themselves begin to change. Brick drains roar with sudden torrents, little waterfalls spilling over their edges. Water races along every gutter, carrying straw, leaves, and something less identifiable you hope isn't what it looks like. You step back, trying to avoid the surge, but the bricks are slick. Your shoe skids, and for one alarming heartbeat you're flailing, arms windmilling, before you catch yourself on a wall. Someone nearby snorts with laughter, but their amusement fades when a louder noise cuts through. The river itself, groaning, as if waking from a long sleep. You're drawn toward the city edge, where people gather with tense faces. The Indus, that wide silver ribbon you admired earlier, has turned into a boiling monster. Brown water churns, branches tumble, an entire log spins like a toy. You can almost feel the river's muscles flexing. Someone points, and you follow their finger to a half-collapsed embankment where the water is chewing hungrily at the land. It's not just about soggy shoes. This river doesn't play nice. Historians still argue whether floods like these, unpredictable and devastating, eventually pushed the Indus Valley people to abandon their cities. Climate shifts, earthquakes, changing trade routes, maybe all of the above. Right now, none of that matters. What matters is that you re-standing way too close to the edge of a furious flood. A man grabs your arm roughly, tugging you back. He barks a command you don't understand, but whose meaning is obvious. Don't be an idiot. You nod, drenched, hair plastered to your face. The roar of water makes everything feel smaller. Your voice, your body, even the massive brick streets behind you. It's like standing beside a wild animal that could swallow the city whole if it chose. You stagger back into the alleys, where water now sloshes around your ankles. Drains that were marvels an hour ago are overwhelmed, bubbling like clogged sinks. Families scramble to lift belongings higher. You see a woman haul a jar of grain onto her shoulder, her child clinging to her skirt. A man lashes his goats together, dragging them onto a rooftop. You try to help, grabbing a loose basket before it floats away. All you earn is a splash of muck in the face. Bronze Age thank yous are apparently optional. The storm doesn't relent. Sheets of rain hammer rooftops, finding every crack, dripping inside. You duck into a house for cover, instantly regretting it as the owner glares. But then she sighs, gestures for you to sit against the wall. You nod gratefully, dripping onto her neatly swept floor. Inside, the smell is a mix of wet earth, oil lamps, and the faint sourness of damp reed mats. It's not cozy, but it's survival. Hours pass. Outside, the streets turn to shallow rivers. You peek out once, only to see a cart half submerged, its wheel bobbing uselessly. Someone shouts as a goat is swept down the lane. The sound of it bleating vanishes into the rain. You close your eyes, trying not to imagine yourself in its place, carried off into the hungry Indus. By nightfall, the rain softens into drizzle, and the city breathes again. People creep out, assessing damage. You follow, squelching through mud that sucks at your feet. The air smells fresh in a way that almost redeems the misery ozone, wet clay, the sweetness of soaked reeds. Fires sputter back to life, flickering weakly. Families sit on rooftops, damp but alive, chewing bread softened with rainwater. You collapse against a wall, trembling, your body drained. Surviving the heat had been brutal, but the river's fury is worse. You realize that here, comfort is never guaranteed. The same river that feeds you can turn against you without warning. Your modern instincts, expecting dams, warning systems, sandbags, don't exist. It's just you, brick walls, and the mercy of water that doesn't know your name. Somewhere nearby, a child laughs at the sight of frogs hopping through puddles, delighted at their sudden invasion. You smile despite yourself. Life here doesn't stop, not even for a flood. But you murmur under your breath, lips cracked and raw, I wouldn't last a day here. The rain has passed, but the city isn't clean and shining like the morning after a spring shower in your hometown. No, Mohenjo-Daro smells like a stew that's been left simmering to long-damped grain. Wet brick, goat droppings now transformed into a slurry, and something sour that clings to your nostrils like regret. You shuffle along the lane, your feet slipping in the slick mud where yesterday's drains failed to keep up. At first glance, the Indus people seem to have built paradise. Covered drains, wells at every corner, even houses with private bathing areas. Later, civilizations will be called advanced, but here, 4,000 years ago, the Indus had already cracked the plumbing code. But you, poor time traveler, soon learn that the line between miracle and misery is razor thin. You pause beside one of the street drains, peering into the dark slit. Water still trickles, carrying little floating clumps of straw, onion skins, and let's be honest, things that no one should ever describe in detail. You back away, gagging. A man passing by smirks as though you've just failed an initiation test. For him, this is Tuesday. For you, it's a waking nightmare. And then you make a rookie mistake. You wander too close to a stagnant pool left by the flood. It glimmers in the late afternoon sun like a tempting mirror, but the smell hits you before the beauty registers. Sulfur, rot, and a whisper of decay. You glance down and spot a mosquito raft, tiny eggs floating together like an evil raft of future torment. A dragonfly hovers above, zipping off with one, but you know enough biology to recognize a breeding ground for fever. You gag again, drawing stares. You think about how in your world, a health inspector would slap a bright orange sticker on this water faster than you can say, "Boil alert, here." The best strategy is avoidance. Unless, of course, your only nearby well becomes contaminated. Then you're stuck with either thirst or gamble. Spoiler, you already gambled once today, and your stomach is staging a protest march. You pass by one of those wells now. It's deeper than you expect, ringed with bricks so neat they almost look machine. A girl draws water, lifting a clay pot as effortlessly as if it weighed nothing. She offers you a drink with a quick smile, but you shake your head this time, patting your belly dramatically. She laughs. Maybe she thinks you're shy. Or maybe she knows foreigners don't last long once the water has had its say. Historians still argue whether these wells were private or communal, and whether people guarded access jealously or shared freely. You don't need an answer. You just need a clean sip. Your tongue feels like leather, but you force yourself to move on. The city smells worse now that the flood has filled every low-lying spot. You turn a corner and nearly trip over a man squatting casually beside the drain, doing something you don't need a translator for. He doesn't even look embarrassed. This is life. Open drains, no toilet paper, no privacy. And this, you suddenly realize, is why those drains were so revolutionary. Without them, the whole city would choke on its own waste. And yet, even with them, danger lurks. Disease spreads invisibly, and you're a soft target. The locals have at least some resistance built over generations. You'd fold faster than a soggy pot. Still, there's ingenuity here that amazes you. You stumble into a courtyard where water has been carefully directed into a rectangular tank, bricks sealed with pitch. Children splash happily, their shrieks echoing off the walls. It looks almost inviting, like a public pool. But then you notice the water's murky sheen, a rainbow film of oils dancing on the surface, and your survival instincts scream, "Stay out." Someone nudges you, grinning, as though daring you to dive. You shake your head with exaggerated fear, which earns you a round of laughter. You don't mind. Better to be the butt of a joke than the host for a parasite colony. Fringe tales float through your brain, stories about people using ash mixed with cow dung as a crude disinfectant, or even crocodile fat smeared on wounds to ward off rot. You can't tell if they're true, but as you stumble past yet another puddle buzzing with mosquitoes, you mutter, "Yeah, maybe I'd try the croc lotion if it meant not dying of dysentery." By evening, the city glows with oil lamps, their smoke curling into the damp air. The drains gurgle faintly, like the city's own digestive system. You sit on a low step, exhausted, watching the flicker of flames reflected in shallow puddles. The people around you don't pause. They carry jars, sweep mud, chase goats, all with a rhythm born of necessity. You, meanwhile, feel the weight of a single truth pressing down harder than the monsoon clouds ever could. Here, water is both gift and curse. Drink it and risk disease. Avoid it and risk death by thirst. Step too close, and the flood can swallow your house. Step too far, and you wither under the sun. The same lifeblood that built this city is the very thing that could erase you in an instant. You rub your aching temples, whispering to yourself, "I wouldn't last a day here," and the drains, gurgling low and foul, almost sound like they agree. Your stomach growls so loudly that the goat tethered nearby actually startles. You clutch your belly in grimace. Food glorious, modern food is all you can think of. A burger, maybe, with melted cheese oozing down the side. Fries, crispy and hot. A cold soda sweating in its cup. The thought is so vivid, you can almost taste it. Then reality smacks you. You're in the Indus Valley, and dinner looks nothing like your drive-through daydreams. You shuffle into a market lane where the air smells of roasted grain, oil smoke, and sweat. Vendors squat behind reed mats piled with lentils, barley, millet, and sesame. Jars of clarified butter glisten in the torchlight, while baskets overflow with dates, figs, and melons. You lean closer, your mouth watering. A woman cracks open a jar of something fermented, maybe yogurt, maybe a proto-pickle, and the tangy aroma makes you wrinkle your nose. The locals handle these foods with practiced ease. They grind barley on stone slabs, pounding rhythmically until the grain turns into coarse flour. Someone slaps dough into thin rounds, lays them on hot stones, and peels them up crisp and steaming. Your stomach does a somersault. You're starving, and that flatbread smells like salvation. But the vendor holds out his hand expectantly. You check your pockets, still no bronze, no cowrie shells, no barter goods. You mime hungry, rubbing your belly. He narrows his eyes, then flicks his hand as if to shoo away a stray dog. Embarrassed, you slink back. Historians still argue whether the Indus people ate mostly vegetarian meals or whether meat played a bigger role. Cattle, goats, and water buffalo were everywhere. But whether they were primarily sacred, milk producers, or dinner is up for debate. You do spot a man hauling a string of fish, silver bodies glistening, scales catching the torchlight. He dumps them onto a reed mat, where another man guts them right in front of you. The smell. You gag, while the crowd just licks their lips. You can't stop staring at the jars of lentils. Tiny, humble, the Bronze Age's version of canned beans. Locals scoop them up by the handful, tossing them into clay pots with onions and spices. The aroma of cumin and turmeric drifts through the air, spices that will one day dominate global trade, but right now just sting your nostrils and make your eyes water. You wonder if your stomach, raised on packaged snacks and processed foods, can handle a diet that's basically grain, beans, and whatever animal didn't run fast enough. Someone offers you a piece of flatbread, at last more out of curiosity than kindness. You accept, trying not to look too desperate. The bread is rough, smoky, and slightly burnt at the edges. You chew carefully, but it scratches your throat, dry as sandpaper. No butter, no sauce, no ketchup packet, just grain and smoke. You swallow and grin weakly, muttering gourmet. The kids watching giggle. Still, the Indus diet has its perks. Dates are sweet, chewy, and surprisingly satisfying. Melons, when you find them, burst with juice that dribbles down your chin. Milk, thick and slightly sour, coats your tongue like a rustic milkshake. But then there are the questionable items. Meat hung too long in the heat. Fish stored in clay jars without refrigeration, pulses sprouting before they're cooked. Your inner germaphobe is screaming. A fringe tale drifts into your mind that the Indus people might have experimented with early fermentation beyond beer, perhaps even proto-cheeses or pickled vegetables. Imagine biting into a chunk of ancient cheese, its flavor somewhere between foot odor and tragedy. You shudder. But then you remember modern blue cheese exists, so maybe it wouldn't be so bad. You wander past a granary where workers unload sacks of grain, stacking them into tidy rows. Mice dart between the cracks, chased by half-starved cats. You picture yourself working here, lifting sacks until your spine begs for mercy, then grinding grain until your arms go numb. The smell of dust and sweat fills your nose, and your stomach, though half satisfied from the bread, churns again. Even the drinking vessels here betray you. Clay cups, unglazed, leave a faint grit on your tongue. You sip cautiously, the liquid warm and sour, some kind of barley brew. Everyone else drinks it like it's the nectar of the gods. You fight back a cough, force a smile, and wipe your lips with your sleeve. Somewhere in your gut, microbes are already high. Somewhere in your gut, microbes are already high. By nightfall, you're lying on a reed mat, belly groaning, tasting smoke and sour milk at the back of your throat. Your stomach clenches, then loosens, then clenches again. You curl into a ball, wishing desperately for antacids. Around you, the family that tolerated your presence eats calmly, chatting in a language you can't decipher, their bodies built for this food, this rhythm. You, meanwhile, wonder if you'll survive till dawn without regretting every bite. The irony doesn't escape you, surrounded by food, but trapped by your own modern body. The lentils, the grains, the fish, their survival here. But to you, they're ticking time bombs. You whisper into the smoky darkness, voice hoarse, I wouldn't last a day here. Your stomach is still staging a rebellion when the real horror hits. Microbes, tiny, invisible assassins that you can't see, smell, or bargain with. In your time, you've got hand sanitizer clipped to your backpack, antibiotics in neat little bottles, and vaccines coursing through your bloodstream. Here, though, you're basically a defenseless buffet table for every parasite and bacterium that calls the Indus Valley home. The first warning sign is the sweat. Not the normal, it's hot and I'm melting into a puddle. Sweat, you already know that flavor. This is clammy, feverish, a sheen that leaves your skin sticky even after the air cools. You sit up on the reed mat, dizzy, your belly rumbling like a drumline gone rogue. The family nearby barely notices. They're used to it. Everyone here has had fevers, stomach cramps, rashes. They've built some resistance over generations. You're like that one person who tries spicy curry for the first time and spends the rest of the night crying into their napkin. Historians still argue whether the big killer here was cholera, dysentery, or just a wide buffet of intestinal parasites. Whatever the specifics, you're not in the mood to debate. You clutch your stomach, feeling the cramps twist like knots in a rope. Every swallow of water threatens to betray you. Your brain screams for Gatorade and electrolytes. Instead, you get tepid well water with a bonus side of mystery bacteria. You stagger outside, gulping air. The city smells sharper than ever. Drains carrying who knows what. Smoke from dung fires. Fermented grain bubbling in pots. Every whiff feels like a microbial handshake. You brush past a wall, sticky clay smearing your palm, and instantly imagine germs crawling over your skin. You wipe it on your tunic, which probably just makes it worse. A fringe tidbit you once read pops into your head. That some ancient cultures believed illness came from evil spirits entering the body through foul air miasma. Standing here, nostrils full of Indus stink, you're half tempted to agree. Forget evil spirits. The smell alone could floor you. You shuffle into the street where a man coughs violently, hacking into a rag. He spits onto the ground, wipes his mouth, and keeps walking. No hand sanitizer, no face mask. You flinch back like he just launched a bio. He glances at you, puzzled by your horror. To him, it's nothing. To you, It's a slow-motion death sentence. As the day drags on, the microbes take charge. Fever fogs your brain. Your legs feel like sandbags, heavy and unresponsive. You collapse near a courtyard where children splash in a water tank. They laugh, flicking droplets at each other, drinking from cupped hands. You watch, torn between envy and dread. They thrive on water that would drop you in a week. Your stomach growls again, then lurches. You clench your teeth, praying you'll hold it together long enough to find a private corner. Spoiler, privacy isn't exactly abundant here. The locals have coping tricks. Someone offers you a drink of sour yogurt, tangy and thick, saying something with a reassuring tone. You sip, and it does ease your stomach a little. Maybe probiotics existed long before health food stores slapped them on labels. Still, the gritty texture and faint goat hair floating on top don't exactly scream 5-star cure. Later, as dusk settles, you notice little clay lamps glowing along the street. The city looks almost serene in the golden light, shadows dancing across brick walls. But inside your body, chaos reigns. You lie down, trembling, every joint aching, every heartbeat too fast. The family around you sleeps peacefully, their snores blending with the hum of insects. You're alone with the creeping realization you're not built for this world. Historians still debate whether epidemics played a role in the collapse of the Indus cities. Maybe floods spread waterborne disease. Maybe trade brought new microbes. Maybe people just grew tired of rebuilding after every outbreak. Whatever the reason, you get a personal glimpse of how fragile life could be. One bad sip, one unlucky mosquito bite, and you're done. You curl tighter, whispering into the darkness, "I wouldn't last a day here," and your gut answers with another ominous growl, as if to agree. Morning sunlight doesn't greet you with birdsong and fresh breezes it blinds you as it reflects off walls of pale baked brick. You squint, groaning, your body sore from sleeping on the reed mat. Around you, the city is already buzzing with activity. Men push carts laden with jars. Women balance baskets on their heads. Children chase each other down narrow lanes. The fever fog has lifted just enough for you to stand. But now comes another obstacle: work. Because here in the Indus Valley, you don't just laze around waiting for DoorDash. If you want to eat, survive, or even be tolerated, you pull your weight. Problem is, you've got the soft hands of someone whose hardest daily labor is carrying grocery bags up apartment stairs. A neighbor gestures at you to follow. You stumble behind him to the edge of a construction site. There, dozens of men and women squat beside mounds of clay, kneading it with bare feet. Others carry wooden molds, packing them with wet clay and flipping them out like bakers with fresh loaves. Sunlight bakes the bricks in neat rows, stretching farther than you can see. Historians still argue whether the city employed professional builders or whether everyone pitched in. Judging from the way this guy thrusts some mold into your hands, you're leaning toward community labor. You drop the first scoop of clay in, pat it flat, and try to flip it. Instead, the entire soggy mess collapses onto your sandals. The workers burst into laughter. You force a sheepish grin, clay dripping between your toes. Next, they hand you a basket and motion toward a distant pile of rubble. A hauling duty. You stagger under the weight of the basket, knees wobbling, shoulders screaming. Everyone else trots along like it's a stroll in the park. By the time you dump the first load, you're wheezing. A woman twice your age passes by, balancing double your weight without breaking stride. You mumble, "Gym membership, 0. Brick membership. 1. Fringe tidbit. Archaeologists have discovered standardized bricks here, all made in a near-perfect 1:2:4 ratio. It sounds boring until you're the one carrying them in 100-degree heat. Then you realize ancient bureaucracy had a cruel sense of humor. By midday, sweat stings your eyes, and your back feels like it's made of splintered wood. You collapse in the shade of a wall, watching others haul, mold, and stack with practiced ease. Your body screams for electrolytes, but all you've got is tepid water in a clay cup. You gulp it anyway, praying you won't regret it. Spoiler, you probably will. Later, someone drags you to the fields outside the city. Rows of barley shimmer in the sun, golden heads swaying. Farmers bend low, cutting with bronze sickles. You're handed one and nudged forward. You swing awkwardly, hacking more stalks than you cut. A kid nearby doubles over laughing. You try again, and this time slice clean, but the motion sends a jolt of pain through your spine. After a dozen swings, you're done, hands blistering, arms trembling. Historians still debate whether the Indus farmers irrigated systematically or just relied on seasonal floods. Looking at the intricate canals nearby, you're convinced someone thought this through. But it doesn't help you much, you're just the awkward tourist trying not to collapse face first into the mud. Evening falls, and you're herded back into the city. Your arms ache, your knees wobble, your back is a wreck. You slump onto your reed mat, every muscle vibrating like an overstretched lute string. Around you, the locals eat, laugh, and plan tomorrow's work. They'll be up before dawn, ready to haul, cut, grind, and build again. You're half convinced your body won't even let you stand in the morning. You whisper into the smoky night, I wouldn't last a day here. And your blistered palms, raw and stinging, throb in painful agreement. Stinging, throb in painful agreement. Your body is sore in places you didn't even know existed. Every step feels like someone has filled your joints with gravel. You shuffle down the lane, clinging to the hope that today won't involve bricks, baskets, or barley sickles. Instead, fate has something equally humbling in store. Craftwork. The clang of metal draws you toward a shaded workshop where men squat over glowing embers. Bellows pump, flames lick, and the air shimmers with heat. Bronze glints as tools take shape: chisels, blades, ornaments. You gape, half awed, half terrified. Fire, metal, and zero safety goggles. A craftsman hands you a lump of copper mixed with tin, gesturing toward the anvil. You hesitate, then swing weakly with the hammer. The lump rolls off, nearly landing on your foot. The workers roar with laughter, slapping their thighs. You give a theatrical bow, pretending it was a comedy act. Historians still argue whether Indus metal workers were household tinkerers or trained specialists. From the look of their practiced motions, you'd bet on the latter. Every strike is purposeful, every tool sharpened to perfection. You, meanwhile, are just trying not to burn off your eyebrows. Next stop, pottery. You sit cross-legged as a woman spins a wheel with her bare hands. Clay rises beneath her fingers into a perfect jar. She pushes it toward you with a smile. You plop down a lump of clay, press too hard, and the whole thing collapses into a sad pancake. The children shriek with laughter. You shrugged dramatically. Modern art, they don't understand the words, but your goofy expression gets the point across. The air here smells of clay dust, ash, and oil. You cough, wiping grime from your face, realizing that the glamorous mystery artifacts in museums were once just someone's workday mess. Beads litter the ground, teeny carnelian, etched with delicate designs. You pick one up, marveling at its detail. The beadmaker gestures for you to drill it. You poke clumsily with the tool, scratching your palm more than the bead. Again, laughter erupts. You're the clown of the workshop, though at least that means you're entertaining. Fringe tidbit. Some Indus seals feature animals historians can't identify, unicorn-like beasts, strange hybrids. Were they sacred symbols, trademarks, or just someone doodling? No one agrees. You imagine yourself trying to carve one and ending up with something that looks like a melted cat. Another round of laughter, no doubt. As the day wears on, you're dragged through weaving, shell carving, and even toy making. Yes, toys, tiny carts, whistles shaped like birds. The kids show off their creations, rolling wheels across the ground. You try to carve one and promptly snap the wheel in half. The children howl with glee, chasing you around with their far superior toys. You laugh too, but inside, you're humbled. They're 10 years old and can outcraft you without breaking a sweat. The sun sets, casting long shadows through the workshop lanes. The craftsmen pack up, satisfied with the day's output. You, covered in ash, clay, and bruises, feel like you've been through a gauntlet. Your products are sad lumps of failed pottery and half-bent scraps of metal. If this were a performance review, you'd already be fired. Historians still debate why. Indus craftsmanship suddenly declined near the civilization's end, whether trade routes collapsed, resources dwindled, or skills were lost. As you stagger away, you can't help thinking, maybe they just ran out of willing interns like you. You slump onto your mat, fingers throbbing, nails lined with clay, lungs aching from smoke. Around you, families admire their handiwork, exchange goods, and prepare for another day of creation. You, however, are certain of one thing. I wouldn't last a day here. Evening has barely fallen, and yet the city doesn't slow. The air is filled with smoke from countless hearths, mingling with the scent of damp clay and sweat, forming an aroma that makes you question every modern candle or air freshener you've ever owned. You thought today might offer a moment of rest after brick, grain, and crafts. But Mohenjo-Daro has another lesson. Danger doesn't take breaks. A clanging noise draws you down a narrow lane where a small kiln is being loaded with clay pots. The fire blazes, licking the walls with hungry tongues of heat. The craftsman gestures for you to carry a pot closer to the flames. You do, and instantly regret if the ceramic is hotter than the sun on a brick street, and your fingertips sizzle under the brief contact. You yelp, dropping the pot safely, but not before smearing it with burnt fingerprints. The artisan doesn't flinch. In fact, he nods approvingly, as if to say, "Good start." Novice, you mutter under your breath, "I've been roasted enough today already." Nearby, a bronze workshop sends waves of smoke into the air. Men hammer heated ingots, their arms swinging with precision. Sparks fly, landing on the dirt lane, and you jump back every time one lands near your sandal. You realize that working here is basically surviving an ongoing fireworks display without any protective gear. Fringe scholars speculate that some accidents were so common that the workers considered minor burns a rite of passage. You've just earned a front row seat. Historians still argue whether occupational hazards contributed significantly to life expectancy in the Indus Valley. One glance at your blistered hands and throbbing arms convinces you that, if nothing else, your modern desk job stamina would have been utterly useless here. You stumble over to the weaving section, where women sit cross-legged on the floor, their fingers flying across looms with threads that shimmer in the lamplight. A boy holds up a partially woven mat and smiles expectantly. You poke at it awkwardly, tangling the threads in a mess that earns another round of laughter. The children find your fumbling hilarious. You say at least you're providing entertainment. Next, you witness an artisan grinding pigment for dye. The dust rises like mist, coating your clothes and hair. You sneeze violently, wiping your eyes with grimy hands. Every breath feels like inhaling powdered stone. You think briefly about your allergies back home, then remember, modern antihistamines don't exist here. You're on your own. Meanwhile, tradesmen pass along the streets, balancing jars, mats, and metal tools with enviable precision. One misstep, and they'd be crushed, burnt, or drowned in the occasional puddle from the earlier flood. You try lifting a small basket and stumble halfway, muscles trembling. A man nearby gestures sharply, probably saying, "Keep up," or "Lose your place." You nod frantically, though you're sure the gesture might mean "Get out of my way." Clumsy stranger. By nightfall, the city streets are dimly lit by oil lamps and smoldering fires. Shadows dance across walls and puddles. Children chase each other, goats bleat somewhere off lane, and the rhythmic clatter of tools continues unabated. You slump against a wall, soaked in sweat, dust, and ash. Every joint protests, every breath tastes of smoke and exertion. You realize survival here isn't about heroics. It's about constant vigilance, endurance, and luck. One moment of distraction, touching hot metal, slipping in mud, inhaling too much pigment can escalate into serious injury. And no one is coming to call an ambulance. You close your eyes, massaging your shoulders. The truth hits hard. Not only is this city overwhelming, it's unforgiving. Every day is a gauntlet of heat, smoke, and labor. You whisper to yourself, "I wouldn't last a day here," and your body, battered and exhausted, seems to nod in solemn agreement. You awake to a new day, convinced naively that it can't possibly be worse than yesterday. Spoiler, it can, and it will. The city greets you with its usual blend of dust, smoke, and faint manure musk. The kind of bouquet that would get 0 stars on a fragrance review. You roll off your reed mat and stretch, but your back makes sounds like an old wooden door opening in a haunted house. Every bone, every joint, is filing a complaint. You shuffle into the lane, feet dragging, when you notice a crowd gathered around a man hunched over a slab of clay. He's pressing a small, carved stone into it with deliberate care. When he lifts it, a crisp, clean impression appears: a bull, a script, a symbol. One of the famous Indus seals. You lean closer, fascinated, until someone pushes the stone toward you, inviting you to try. You press down eagerly, imagining yourself immortalized as a protoscribe. Instead, your sweaty fingers slip, the clay sticks, and you smear the impression into what looks like a badly drawn potato. The crowd chuckles, some shaking their heads. You bow with exaggerated drama, as though it were a planned performance. Congratulations, you've invented abstract art a few thousand years early. Historians still argue over what these seals were for. Ownership tags, trade receipts, religious emblems. You suspect that in your hands, the answer is comic relief. But for the locals, it's serious business. Here is lifeblood, and you are, once again, the weakest link in the system. From seals, you're ushered toward the marketplace, a labyrinth of sounds and smells. People shout prices in words you don't know. Goats bleat angrily. Carts creak over uneven bricks. A vendor thrusts a basket of barley into your arms. The task: deliver it across the lane. Easy, right? You take 2 steps, trip on a loose stone, and watch in horror as half the grains cascade into the mud like golden rain. The shopkeeper groans, the crowd laughs, and you silently question all your life choices. Meanwhile, a young woman balances 2 jars of water on her head and glides past you like she's on a runway. You stare in awe, then, fueled by fragile ego, you grab a single jar and attempt the same. 3 steps in, your knees wobble, arms flail, and you stagger like a drunken flamingo. Somehow, you don't drop it. Victory? Maybe. Dignity? Absolutely not. Nearby, children play with clay toys, miniature carts, little whistles shaped like birds. You pick one up, blow, and produce a sound that's half duck quack, half squeaky hinge. The kids erupt in laughter, pointing at you as if you've just invented comedy. Well, at least you're good for morale. The sun climbs higher, burning like a cruel overseer. The mud brick walls radiate heat, and every step you take stirs dust that sticks to your sweaty skin. You try to find shade, but the city is stingy with comfort. You remember hearing a fringe claim that some people here mixed cow dung with oil for sunscreen. You gag at the thought and decide to embrace your inevitable sunburn instead. Your stomach growls. Food here is tricky grains, bread, dates, maybe some fish butt. The system of exchange is mysterious to you. You mime hunger at a stall, managing to secure a small crumb of bread. It's chewy, slightly sour, but miraculous enough to silence your belly's protests. Historians still argue whether this bread was flavored with spices or herbs, or whether it was plain survival food. Either way, you chew slowly, savoring it like a Michelin-starred dish, while reminding yourself that a single stomach bug could end you. By late afternoon, your body is already collapsing. Muscles ache, feet throb, and your brain feels cooked in its own juices. You sit against a wall, watching the locals breeze through tasks that nearly broke you. Men hoist sacks heavier than you onto their shoulders without flinching. Women carry water over long distances as if it's second nature. Children dash through alleys with endless energy. You're a puddle in human form. You glance back at your failed clay stamp, your spilled barley, your wobbly jar-carrying attempt, and sigh. This place doesn't care about your clumsiness, just keeps moving, relentless, demanding, The lesson is written in sweat on your skin and ache in your bones. Every corner of this city demands constant strength, awareness, and skill. One lapse, one weak muscle, one wrong step hand, you're done. You whisper again, half to yourself, half to the indifferent city. I wouldn't last a day here. And the streets, buzzing with life, seem to agree. When you're ready, just say continue, and I'll expand section 12 the same way. Would you like me to keep sprinkling in extra quirky fringe tidbits like the cow dung sunscreen in each expanded section for fun? Or should I lean more into the serious sensory immersion side? Night falls like a heavy curtain, smothering the edges of the city in layers of shadow. You'd think the darkness would bring relief, but instead it sharpens your awareness of how foreign this place feels. The heat ebbs, yes, but what replaces it is a damp chill that creeps into your skin like a slow leak. Your sweat-soaked clothes cling stubbornly, never drying. Each movement a clammy reminder that your modern laundry habits will be missed more than you ever thought possible. Oil lamps flicker to life along the main lanes, their flames shaky. their smoke curling into the air with a tang of burning sesame oil. The light is uneven, glowing one moment and dimming the next, so that the walls seem to ripple as though they're breathing. The shadows play tricks on you faces where there are none, movement where nothing stirs. You hug your arms around yourself, shivering not just from the coolness, but from the feeling that this city never fully sleeps. You follow a sound, a rhythm that draws you like a moth to flame, the steady grind of stone on grain. In a courtyard, women sit cross-legged, bent over flat grinding slabs. They move their pestles in slow circles, bodies swaying gently with the motion. The sound is hypnotic crunch, scrape, crunch like the heartbeat of the city itself. One of them notices you watching and gestures. A pestle is placed in your hands. You kneel awkwardly and try. The moment the stone meets the grain, your clumsy pressure sends kernels flying across the ground. The women chuckle, not unkindly, but you can feel your face burn hotter than any kill. You adjust, press harder, and this time the motion feels more controlled. Grain turns to coarse powder, your arms burning after only a few passes. You glance at the women beside you. Their faces are calm, almost meditative, their arms moving with the ease of lifetimes spent in this rhythm. You, on the other hand, are sweating after 30 seconds. Fringe scholars have suggested that these grinding sessions weren't just about food, but about community. Gossip, advice, stories all whispered over grain. Maybe even matchmaking or subtle negotiations. You'd like to listen, but your brain is too busy screaming at your shoulders. You hand the pestle back with a sheepish bow. Historians still argue whether men joined in these tasks, or whether the kitchen was strictly a women's domain. Judging by your poor performance, you imagine the men were spared, or at least quietly excused. Either way, your brief attempt has earned you more laughter than flour. You retreat into the lanes, drawn by a burst of laughter. Children play in the dim light, tossing balls of wound reeds, spinning tops, and squeaky clay whistles. One boy shoves a miniature clay cart into your hands, challenging you with a grin. You set it down, give it a push, and watch it topple almost immediately. The boy snatches it back, rolls it perfectly straight, and raises his eyebrows triumphantly. You've been defeated by twice in one day. You applaud, because dignity is overrated anyway. Your stomach interrupts, twisting like a cranky serpent. You haven't eaten enough, and what you have eaten sits uneasily. The memory of questionable water makes you hesitate, but thirst gnaws at you, too. You eye a jar sitting by a doorway, beads of condensation glistening on its rim. Temptation is cruel. You lift it, sip, and immediately regret it. Tepid, gritty, something floating. You swallow anyway, because survival sometimes means gambling. You brace for microbial mutiny. The city hums. Lanes echo with distant chatter. Pots clink as they're stacked away. A goat bleats indignantly as it's tugged into a pen. Smoke drifts from a kill, sharp and earthy. The air is heavy with dust, spiced faintly with cooking fires. You slump against a wall, sliding down until your knees are at your chest. Every muscle in your body feels wrung out. You think about the day, the spilled barley, the failed seal stamp, the awkward balancing act, the endless heat. You wonder if your modern conveniences, lovators, microwaves, Google Maps have made you so soft that you're functionally useless here. The truth is uncomfortable. A pair of men shuffle past carrying bundles of reeds, muttering about repairs. You watch them, their movements synchronized, efficient, like a practiced dance. You wonder if anyone in this city ever has the luxury of stopping. Rest here doesn't seem like idleness. It's just preparation for the next task. Historians still debate whether there was centralized leadership here, or if daily life was self-organized by community clusters. You're inclined to believe the latter. Everywhere you look, there's quiet cooperation. No overseers shouting, no guards enforcing. Just people working, carrying, surviving, moving forward without pause. A breeze sneaks into the lane, brushing your skin, carrying scents of damp earth and charred grain. It feels oddly soothing, like the city's way of patting you on the back after another brutal day. Your eyelids grow heavy, though your body still aches. You tilt your head back against the wall and glance at the sky. Stars dot the canvas faintly, obscured by the haze of smoke and dust, but still visible. For the first time, you let yourself imagine the bigger picture, a civilization thriving under those same stars, day after day, year after year, for centuries. Their rhythm is brutal to you, but to them it is life, unbroken, unyielding, deeply human. And that's when the whisper slips from your lips, barely audible, more like a thought than a sound. I wouldn't last a day here. The city hums on, indifferent, almost as if it agrees. Morning rises again, but this time the city greets you with something new. The heavy scent of damp earth and the distant roar of water. You blink awake on your reed mat, already sticky with sweat, though the sun has barely climbed the horizon. A neighbor rushes past, shouting words you don't understand, carrying a bundle of pots. Another drags goats by their horns. You sit up, bewildered, until the truth unfurls in your guts. Something is wrong with the river. You stagger outside, still groggy, and are instantly swept into the current of panic. Families scurry like ants, balancing baskets, bundles, jars, tools. The air thrums with urgency. Someone shoves a basket of grain into your arms without explanation, and before you can protest, you're swept along toward the embankment. The Indus is unrecognizable. Yesterday it was broad and steady, its murky waters gliding with indifferent strength. Today it is swollen, frothing, gnashing at its banks like a living thing. The current tears at the soil, dragging chunks into itself. The sound is deafening, a low, endless growl that shakes the very air. You step back instinctively, the hairs on your neck rising, flooding. You've read about it. Sure, but experiencing it is another story. The city's ingenious drains, so precise, so orderly, suddenly seem like tiny toys against this chaos. You watch as water surges into alleys, racing down channels that can't possibly contain it. People shout, rushing to redirect flow with reeds and stones. You stand there with your basket of grain, useless, frozen. Someone barks at you, gesturing wildly. You realize they want you to help lift a stack of bricks. You lurch forward, fumbling, but your arms shake under the weight. The locals hoist them easily, stacking them into a makeshift barrier. You struggle with a single brick, slipping in the mud, your shins splattered. Your contribution feels like a child pretending to help. Historians still argue whether the flooding of the Indus was seasonal, predictable, or catastrophic enough to destabilize cities. You have no doubt now it's catastrophic, at least to someone unprepared, and the city's survival clearly depends on everyone knowing their role, moving in rhythm like a great machine. Everyone except you. The ground squelches beneath your feet, swallowing your sandals with a greedy slurp. Your basket of grain feels heavier by the minute. The stalks damp, the kernels clumping. You try to keep it aloft, but water splashes your legs, creeping higher with every surge. People shout instructions in a language you cannot pass, their gestures frantic. You catch one phrase repeated, something sharp, urgent, probably a command to hurry. The air is thick, humid, alive with the smell of mud, river weeds, and something sour that you'd rather not identify. Sweat mingles with the damp, your clothes plastered to your body. You remember reading somewhere that ancient people might have used reed mats, weighted with stones, to block floodwaters temporarily. You glance around and see just that mats laid across openings, stones piled to hold them. It's clever, but you can't shake the feeling that the river is laughing at these efforts. A boy darts past you, barefoot, carrying 2 jars of water as though it's a game. He leaps across puddles, deposits them near a wall, and dashes off again. You're winded just watching him. The resilience here is astounding. These people have trained their bodies and minds for this cycle of disaster. While you pampered by modern plumbing and weather apps are a liability in human form. Nearby, a group forms a chain, passing buckets from the river to douse a fire that's broken out where a cooking hearth toppled in the rush. The flames hiss and sputter, smoke curling into the already heavy sky. You stumble closer, hoping to join in, but when the bucket reaches you, your grip fails. Water splashes onto your legs instead of the flames. Groans rise around you, though one man offers a tight smile as if to say, "At least you tried." Quirky fringe tidbits bubble up in your memory. You once heard a claim that the Indus people stored emergency pickles in clay jars to survive flood seasons. You imagine yourself clinging to a jar of spicy mango pickle as the waters rise, only to realize you don't even know how to open the seal without shattering it. Survival here is not about quirky snacks. It's about muscle, timing, and an iron will. As the water creeps higher, you scramble toward a raised platform, heart hammering. From this vantage, you see the city's layout differently. The straight streets, the elevated homes, the thoughtful placement of drains, all looks like a chessboard designed to outwit the river. For centuries, perhaps it worked. But today, the water pushes harder, as though determined to remind humans whose boss. Historians still argue whether these floods eventually drove the Indus people to abandon their cities. Standing here, watching the river claw at the walls, you don't need debate. You feel it, the fragility of brick against water, of human plans against nature's tantrum. The debate isn't abstract when your toes are wet. Your arms ache, your basket now abandoned, your legs spattered with mud. You help where you can, lifting reeds, stacking bricks, ferrying small loads, but every movement feels clumsy compared to the effortless rhythm of those around you. They are water's equal. You are water's prey. The hours stretch. The river's rage softens, just slightly, like a beast tiring. The floodwaters stop rising and instead spread into low areas, leaving glistening puddles and a stink of silt. People collapse onto steps and doorways, panting, their faces streaked with sweat and mud. You collapse too, every muscle trembling. You feel as if you've aged a decade in a single morning. The city doesn't pause long. Even as exhaustion hangs thick, repairs begin. Mud scraped, jars refilled, fires rekindled. The rhythm resumes. You marvel at their resilience, but your body begs for surrender. As night falls again, you lie awake on your damp mat, every joint throbbing. Your mind replays the day, the swollen river, the frantic shouts, the failed buckets, the endless mud. You whisper, almost delirious, I wouldn't last a day here, and the river outside seems to chuckle in the dark. Agreeing, the midday sun is relentless, a white-hot coin hammered into the sky, and you feel every ounce of its punishment. Heat radiates off the baked mud brick walls, rebounds off the cracked street, and settles heavy across your shoulders like a burning cloak. You squint as sweat trickles into your eyes, stinging and salty, forcing you to swipe at your face again and again. The air shimmers with it, a slow dance of heat waves, mocking your modern body that has been pampered by air conditioning and shaded sidewalks. Here, there is no escape. You thought you were getting used to this world, after all. You survived the floods, the microbes, the endless labor, but the sun reminds you how fragile that illusion is. Each step feels heavier than the last, and you're only halfway down the narrow lane. The city does not pause for your misery. Goats jostle past, their little hooves clattering over brick. A pair of men roll a cart piled high with baskets of grain, their faces shining with sweat, but their arms moving with practiced strength. Children dash in and out of alleyways, their laughter sharp and piercing, unbothered by the heat that makes you stumble. It strikes you again. They were born into this rhythm, tuned to it like a song, while you are the bumbling outsider who doesn't know the lyrics. You wander toward one of the canals, desperate for shade, though the water itself is sluggish and brown from yesterday's flood. It gurgles softly against its mud-lined banks, carrying reeds and floating scraps of debris. Children squat nearby, cupping handfuls to drink or splashing one another with shrieks of delight. You stare in disbelief. Every sip they take would be a microbial roulette wheel for you, but for them, it is simply water. Life itself. Fringe historians have speculated that some canals here may have been coated with bitumen or other sealants to minimize leakage. A clever adaptation for a civilization that wrangled water with the precision of engineers. Yet no coating could block the invisible swarm of bacteria your gut still fears. One wrong sip, and your intestines could stage a mutiny worse than any flood. You turn away, throat dry, clinging to the faint hope that someone will hand you fruit instead of forcing you to play pathogen roulette. A woman balances 2 clay jars on her head, the water inside sloshing dangerously close to the rim. She moves with a grace that would put professional dancers to shame. Each step deliberate, each sway of her hips perfectly calculated to keep equilibrium. You, of course, try to imitate her lifting a single jar, wobbling like a marionette whose strings were cut too soon. Your knees buckle, your spine curves like a question mark, and you shuffle 3 steps before nearly spilling the whole thing. A child nearby claps sarcastically, and you bow dramatically, trying to save face. Humor may be your only surviving skill. You retreat to the marketplace again, because food at least offers momentary comfort. The stalls are alive with sound and smell, roasted grains popping, dates glistening in the sunlight, fish drying on racks, their scales sparkling like little mirrors. The vendors shout prices, their voices overlapping in a chaotic chorus. Historians still argue whether trade here relied purely on barter, or whether standardized weights and measures served as a proto-currency. You don't need to solve the debate, you just need to keep your stomach from caving in. You mime hunger, point at a basket of dates, and manage to negotiate a few sticky pieces by overacting your gratitude. The vendor raises an eyebrow, unimpressed, but allows it. You bite into the fruit, and the sweetness explodes across your tongue. A rare moment of bliss in this unforgiving world. But even eating is work here. The sticky sugar coats your teeth, and without modern toothbrushes, you can only chew nervously, knowing cavities in this time are less a dental inconvenience and more a sentence to endless pain. Fringe tidbit. Some archaeologists suggest twigs or herbal powders might have been used as primitive toothbrushes. You imagine chewing on a bitter stick of neem and decide maybe dental hygiene can wait until you're back in your own era. From fruit stalls, you drift toward a communal oven. The heat hits you before you even reach it, a blast of fire that makes you flinch. Women slap flattened dough onto hot stones, pulling out steaming rounds of bread that smell like heaven itself. You are handed a small lump of dough. You try to mimic their motion, but your piece lands crookedly, folds in on itself, and burns at the edges almost instantly. They laugh softly, kindly, but you feel the sting of inadequacy. They've done this since childhood, their hands quick and sure. You are, once again, an intruder fumbling through their rhythm. By late afternoon, the city seems to close in around you. The walls, the lanes, the constant labor, it all presses down until your breath grows shallow. You stumble to a shaded corner, body trembling from dehydration, hunger, and sheer exhaustion. You sit against a wall, feeling the rough bricks dig into your back, and try to will your pulse to slow. The world does not stop. Carts clatter past, goats bleat, workers unload sacks of barley, and children dash around, laughing as though the sun is a friend and not an enemy. You are reminded, painfully, that the city is built on endless labor, and everyone here plays a part. Your part, at best, is comic relief. Historians still debate the reasons for the eventual decline of the Indus city's climate shifts. River changes, internal collapse, or some combination of all three. As you sit there, drenched in sweat, skin sticky with dust, you silently cast your vote for climate did it. A civilization this well-tuned to labor and rhythm would only falter against forces even greater than themselves. As dusk approaches, you force yourself upright. Your body creaks, your muscles ache, but you shuffle forward, unwilling to collapse entirely in the middle of the lane. The air cools slightly, though the smell of mud and smoke lingers. You glance at the canals again, catching the shimmer of the setting sun on sluggish water. And for a moment, even with your aching body, you marvel at the ingenuity of it all. But awe doesn't erase exhaustion. You whisper again, with dry lips and weary bones, I wouldn't last a day here, and your body, quivering and overheated, agrees. Night drapes itself across the city with a kind of weary elegance. The daytime furnace fades, replaced by a damp coolness that seeps into your joints. Whispering reminders that survival here doesn't pause when the sun dips below the horizon. The streets are darker, narrower, the lanterns casting shaky halos of light that dance against the mud brick walls. Shadows stretch like living things, and for a moment you wonder if the whole city is breathing round you. You stumble through the lanes, every muscle trembling with fatigue. Your shoulders ache from carrying grain, your palms are raw from hauling jars. Your back feels like it's been used as a kill shelf. You'd kill for a matrosaur, at the very least. Ibuprofen, but all you have is the hard reassurance of a reed mat waiting somewhere. If you're lucky enough to claim it, the city doesn't sleep the way you expect. Instead, it hums. The hum is soft, but constant like a heartbeat, steady and unyielding. You pass a courtyard where women are still grinding grain by lamplight, their pestles thudding against stone in a rhythm older than memory. A few men haul bundles of reeds, muttering lowly to one another. Children curl on mats, giggling under their breath, fighting sleep with whispers of stories you cannot understand. It's both comforting and unnerving. The city's pulse never fully slows. You sink against a wall, your legs folding beneath you, and let the sights and sounds wash over your half-conscious mind. The flicker of fire, the smell of smoke and ash, the faint scent of wet earth left by the floodal of it, paints a sensory portrait of a world that is relentless but alive. You think back over everything you've endured. The heat that scalded your skin, the floods that threatened to sweep you away, the microbes lurking in every drop of water, waiting like silent assassins, the endless work, hauling, grinding, molding, balancing, sweating until your body felt hollow. And in the middle of it all, the people so skilled, so tuned to this rhythm you can barely fake. Historians still argue over what life here truly looked like. Were these cities ruled by kings, councils, or none at all? Were these people unified in faith or scattered in belief? Did their decline come from shifting rivers or from something more complex? A story we may never piece together. You don't need the scholarly debate. You've lived enough of their daily grind to know one truth. This is a world designed for resilience, and you are not built for it. Your stomach twists, reminding you of the dates and bread you managed to eat earlier. Sweetness clings to your teeth, and your gut growls with quiet rebellion. You wonder how these people handle sickness. Herbs, rituals, or do they simply endure, letting the strongest carry the rhythm forward? The thought alone makes you shiver. In your world, a stomachache means over-the-counter remedies and electrolyte packets. Here, it might mean the end. A faint breeze brushes your face, carrying the smell of the river, earthy and metallic. You glance toward it, imagining the water snaking past, dark and unreadable in the moonlight. The same river that brings life to these people threatens them with floods, disease, and shifting banks. Yet they build beside it, again and again, accepting its moods as fact, not tragedy. It is humbling, and it makes your modern anxieties feel flimsy in comparison. The stars above are faint but steady, little pinpricks beyond the dust of the day. You let your gaze rest there, shoulders sinking a fraction, and feel something shift inside. For all its brutality, there is a beauty here. The laughter of children, the precise hands of potters, the discipline of builders, the patience of grinders, all of it forms a tapestry. A civilization humming with energy, not perfect, but astonishingly alive. You whisper the phrase, again, barely audible, more to yourself than the night. I wouldn't last a day here, and you believe it. Every inch of your trembling body, every twitch of sore muscle, every churn of your uneasy stomach agrees with you. Yet underneath the exhaustion, there is a tiny ember of awe flickering stubbornly. Now the night deepens further. The laughter fades. The clatter of carts quiets. The pestles grow slower, softer, until their rhythm becomes more of a lull than a labor. One by one, oil lamps wink out, their flames retreating into tiny curls of smoke. The city settles, though never fully still, its heartbeat slowing into a gentler rhythm meant to guide you toward rest. You lie back on the reed mat, its roughness familiar now, almost comforting. Your body sinks heavily, muscles releasing tension they've held for hours. Each breath feels longer, slower, softer. You notice the faint hum of insects outside, the distant gurgle of the canal, the occasional sigh of wind threading through reeds. These sounds blur together, forming a kind of cradle for your mind. As you close your eyes, you imagine the city not as a place of punishment, but as a landscape of whispers, bricks holding the warmth of the day, canals glowing faintly under starlight, pots cooling after hours in the kiln, children breathing evenly in their sleep. Every detail you fought against now folds into something softer. The city is no longer a taskmaster, is a lullaby, ancient and patient, pulling you into its rhythm. Your breath deepens, in, out, in, out. Each inhale draws in the night air, earthy and cool. Each exhale releases the aches and worries clinging to your frame. Slowly, the tension unwinds, like knots loosening in the fibers of your body. You remember the sweetness of the date on your tongue, the warmth of bread even when burned at the edges, the shimmer of the stars above the dusty haze. These fragments stitch themselves together, soothing your mind like threads of a calming story. The city quiets further. Somewhere, a dog barks once, then curls back into silence. Somewhere else, a pot clinks softly as it cools. The rest is stillness. Only the steady river continues its endless murmur, guiding you to let go, and so you drift gently into the safety of night. The Indus Valley, relentless in daylight, has softened into a cradle of stars, canals, and sleeping lives. You are safe for now, resting in its rhythm. Tomorrow may demand more than you can give, but tonight the city holds you. Your eyelids grow heavy, your pulse slows, your breath is a lull. You are part of the silence now, part of the story whispered by the walls, the river, the endless sky. Sleep comes quietly, sweet dreams, dreams.